Hi, welcome back to another episode of Darius College Steps to Success. And today we have a very special guest. She goes by the name Jill Reilly, and she has written a book called The 10 Permissions. So we're going to go ahead and get right into it. And so, Jill, can you please tell us a little bit about your book, 10 Permissions?
Yeah, thanks, Darius. The subtitle of it is Rewriting the Rules of Adulting for the 21st Century. And the basic idea behind it is that, we need to rethink how we navigate our adult lives. If you're talking about the steps to success, the reality is those steps have changed a lot over the past couple of decades. It's a totally different world from your parents' world, from my parents' world. And the idea of the book is that we kind of need to give ourselves permission to think about how we're going to do our adult lives really differently, because it isn't, get a good degree, get a good job, and then you're set. It is really
Right.
requiring people to be a lot more adaptive, a lot more creative. So it's got 10 different ways for you to think differently about what it's going to look like, how you can expect to sort of find your way through it, to really give yourself permission to create a path forward for yourself that suits you, suits now, is not about just, doing what your parents say or what you think you're supposed to be doing, but, to create something that really feels like it's both relevant and meaningful for you. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Before this, we talked a little bit about like my first 2 years of college and how I kind of really was just chilling. But my last 2 years, like you said, I gave myself a little bit more permission to go out and do stuff, get a little bit more involved with conferences and presentations and everything that I need to do to be able to become, I guess, like successful. But like, there's still plenty of work to do.
Hmm,
I mean,
hmm.
when you were thinking about writing this book, how did you stumble upon the idea of how to start writing it? You told us a little bit about it, but how does one like you get this mindset about, I think this is what people should be able to do and give themselves permission?
Yeah, it was actually a long time coming. I mean, my whole professional career has been in the business of helping people make or manage change. My background is actually in social change and social development. And as we were talking about before we started, I sort of realized early on that I could give people a lot of things. I could give them training, I could give them money, I could really support people in a whole lot of different ways to make the changes that they wanted to make in their lives, but they had to give themselves permission. The idea is like you are your own green light for action. Nobody else outside of you can make you into the person that you want to be. I
Yeah.
talk about in the book that we kind of raise young people to seek permission. Like if you're a good person, if you're a good boy, a good girl, you go and you ask for permission to do the things that you want to do, which is fine. But as you move into adulthood, you've got to start giving yourself that permission, as you described, like you did, authorize yourself, back yourself, kind of drive your own life forward. And a lot of people sort of spend time consciously or unconsciously waiting for somebody to tell them what's right, or somebody to tell them that it's okay, somebody to, direct them or guide them to what they should be doing. And I think particularly now when there's a lot happening, people are super overwhelmed by choices and options. It's really important that you take that responsibility into yourself.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think setting yourself up first is what comes important. And so giving yourself like permission over things what you want to do, just kind of like dream. I think I never thought about starting this podcast until I gave
Right.
myself like you said, permission to like start it. So yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things that
Initially,
sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
No, one of the things that I talk about is like most people aren't consciously sort of sitting there going, okay, I need somebody to give me permission. Like I need my parents or I need a professor or whatever. It's not that you're consciously waiting for somebody to give you permission. It's that you're just not used to giving it to yourself. So,
Right.
what I talk about is like kind of really like elevating that to a point of like a more conscious thing of, I want to do this. I'm allowed to do it. There's nothing standing in my way. I'm going to go and try it. And, even if it doesn't work out, even if it's not like, whatever I might imagine success to be in my own mind, by going out and trying it, like creating this podcast, you're going to learn something. You're going to grow. So, yeah, it's like really like being that much more deliberate about, allowing yourself to go after some of the things that you really want.
Right. Yeah. So when you initially reached out, you worked, well, you said globally for about
Mm.
over 30 years, right? So what are some common patterns you've seen in how people struggle but also thrive through transitions? Have you kind of seen any patterns as you've kind of worked globally over the last 30 years or so?
Yeah, great question. Let me talk about struggle. I'll just start there and end on a more positive note. I think the reality is that when faced with making change, most people are change averse. They like what they know. They like what they've always been doing. They worry
Yeah.
about what if. So they can be hesitant or reluctant to try new things, to go after what they want. And they often kind of like double down on the way they've always done things or the way that they know how to do things because it feels safer and more secure there. So, part of what I'm talking about here is just, again, getting almost better at preparing yourself for change because you're going to have to deal with it all the time. Like, I didn't grow up in nearly as disruptive a world as you are. So, you need to be ready to deal with changes that are coming at you and to make changes that you want to make. So, a lot of what I'm talking about is being really intentional about one, exposing yourself to new things. Like, it's really important just not to get stuck in like such a routine that you're not exposed to new ideas or new people or new experiences, because by doing that, you kind of keep yourself, learning. That for me is the single biggest thing. Like, if you are in a position, and I know in college you're like learning things all the time, but I'm talking about even on a more basic level. Like, if you're always kind of exposing yourself to new things that stimulate you and keep you kind of in what I describe as like an active learning mode, it's like you're
Right.
naturally then a lot more curious and receptive and adaptive. And those are the things that I think young people right now really need to be focused on being, is like curious. I'm interested and I'm open to new ideas and new experiences and
Uh-huh.
receptive. So when something new comes at me, I'm not like, I don't block it straight away. I don't just perceive it as a threat. And then I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to do things differently. I'm willing to kind of not just say, well, I don't know how to do that or I've never done that. So, um, yeah, for me, and this might sound a little, I don't know if you'll get this, but I kind of approach it as like almost from like a fitness perspective. So if you
Okay.
wanted to kind of, it's like a muscle, and you
Right.
need to kind of keep working it in order to be able to do the things that you want to do. So if you were wanting to kind of run a marathon or whatever, you wouldn't just go out and start running the next day. You'd prepare for it. So,
Yeah.
it's sort of like you are entering into a lifetime change marathon, and you need to be ready for it by building up the muscles that it takes to keep changing. So, little things that routinely kind of put you in a mindset of, hey, this is new, this is interesting, I'm going to try it, I'm going to learn new things. Those are like ways of being that you have to just keep exercising a lot so that
Uh-huh.
when you want to make a change in your life, you're not like starting from nothing. You feel like you're kind of ready for it.
Yeah, I think that the worst I've started to learn, like the worst people can say is like no, or maybe you don't like it and you can try something else, you can try something different. And the way is have I been going into college? I mean, I
Totally.
tried out intramural or soccer for the first time ever this past fall, and it was cool. Like I never thought I'd ever play that or ever do that, and I did it. I was like playing goalie. So, I mean, life is interesting and you never know what could happen. Many college students are trying to figure out who they are outside of expectations from parents, professors, or society. What permission do you think they need right now?
That's like the $1 million question, isn't it? So my first permission is be willful, and
Mhm.
that is about like, what do you want? I think for a lot of young people, from an early age, we are not encouraged to, name what we want, to go after what we want. We kind of look around and try and figure out what other people want, or what other people want us to want, right? Because we're
Uh-huh.
trying to please people. And I think it's particularly hard when you're a young person. You want the people in your life to approve of you. You want them to be proud of you. You want to do things that you think other people will applaud you for, if you will. And I think the key to kind of starting to back yourself and not only satisfy other people's expectations is beginning to kind of allow yourself to just ask yourself, like, what do I really want to do? Right. And that doesn't have to be for the rest of my life. It doesn't have to be forever. But, a lot of people just won't even allow themselves to ask themselves that question. And they kind of, when they come up with an answer for it, they're often like afraid that maybe other people won't approve of that. And so, one of the things that I talk about a lot in the book is again, like kind of exercising your will and exercising your want on a smaller basis. I mean, you probably know people like I do who, when you say like, what do you want for lunch? They're like, I don't know. What do you want? They don't, they're not used to like looking in and like listening in to themselves. And I think starting to listen in, starting to hear your own inner voice, your own inner, I kind of describe this as starting to learn to find your own way, as opposed to looking around and asking everybody else what the way is. Like, you've got to start backing yourself. You've got to start listening to yourself, and you've got to start trusting
Mhm.
yourself. And that, won't happen overnight if you haven't been doing it for most of your life. So I would say start small. Don't necessarily start with big life decisions, but start with stuff like you're talking about, like joining the soccer team or, taking a class that you want that maybe your parents will be like, why are you taking that?
Yeah.
Little things that start to say, okay, I trust the fact that I want this. I'm going to go figure out, what it's about. Again, it might doesn't mean it's all going to work out. It doesn't mean it's all going to be perfect, but you're starting to kind of cultivate a little bit more of listening and trusting yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that's the first thing of figuring it out. I had very strict parents, and so like when I got to college, I kind of really didn't know a lot, or well, I didn't know how to like answer things for myself or figure out kind of like what I wanted, and so that was kind of like my first couple years trying to figure that part out and trying to figure out how these things are gonna go. But
Yeah, I mean, I've got two teenage sons, so I get it from a parenting perspective. And trust me, part of my conversation around permissions is also with parents, because I don't think we always do as much as we could to prepare you for the real world. I think a lot of times it's sort of protecting you and thinking that we know best, and that by asserting our opinions and our will on you, that we are somehow helping you. And my message to parents is we aren't. We can't send kids into the world who've never ever listened to themselves, made their own decisions, made mistakes, failed, took a risk, figured something out on their own. I mean, these are really fundamental things that, when you're stepping out into the real world of work, you better be prepared to kind of do some of these things. So, yeah, I think college is a great time for that. You got lots of things going on around you. There's lots of stuff on offer that you can try out. I mean, and I really, really want to encourage people to take advantage of that. Because once you're out and there isn't this community around you and this like ecosystem around you that's entirely
Right.
engineered to like help you learn, you realize that, okay, wow, that was pretty amazing that I was surrounded by my friends and by this really stimulating environment. So take advantage of it to let it, expand you, let it stretch out some of your interests, some of your reference points, because it's a great, great time to do that.
Yeah, I agree. So, kind of tying back to college life and identity, looking back, what permission do you wish you had given yourself earlier in your life or your career? So, kind of a personal self-reflection type
Oh,
of question.
yeah, sure. I mean, this work is very personal for me. I mean, but let me flip, if you don't mind, let me take that question with. So I was the typical, like, I'm going to be an overachiever. I'm going to get straight A's. I'm going to make everybody around me happy. I'm going to do everything
Right?
I'm supposed to do. And then I got to college, very similar. And I started to get exposed to different things and different people. And if I can say, maybe I wish I'd started it even earlier, that I started to do what we've been talking about, which is back myself in terms of my own interests. And I ended up getting a degree in African studies. And you can only
Oh,
imagine two parents sitting in St. Louis, Missouri, having sent their daughter off to college hoping that she'd get this like super valuable degree. We're like, what?
right.
What are you doing? And I was like, I don't know. I think it's really interesting. And it's teaching me important things in terms of critical thinking and writing. But while I was getting this degree in African studies, South Africa was going through this major transition from, they were going to hold their first democratic elections the year after I graduated from college. And I decided that I wanted to get to South Africa for those elections. So I then told my parents that I wasn't going to go to law school. I was actually going to go to South Africa. And again, you can only imagine they were like so thrilled by these choices. They were like, oh my God, what went wrong here? Like, we thought we had this perfect young woman, and now she's like completely gone.
Right.
I started giving myself permission relatively early to listen in, to be, even if my interests like were not the interests that other people had, even if they appeared weird, even if I couldn't explain them to other people. One of the things I talk about in the book is that sometimes when you're in the process of getting to know yourself, it's when you kind of become unknowable to the people around you. So you're becoming a version of you that they're not familiar with. Like, who is this? Who's this Jill
Right.
that's suddenly interested in South Africa? And as much as that can feel really awkward and uncomfortable, it's a really important thing for you to go, it's okay. They love me. I love them, and we can handle some awkward and uncomfortable conversations. And I had loads of them with my parents where they were just like, we do not get why you were doing this. And
Uh-huh.
I was just like, because I want to, and because I think it's going to be a really amazing experience. It's going to change my life. And I was right. So, I think I really, again, it's a great time to start to just back yourself a little bit and start early. Start early with things that might, I started big. I started with things that completely freaked my parents out, but
Right.
you can start with stuff that won't necessarily freak them out, like stuff that's not quite so consequential, and just start pursuing things that interest you and listen to that. Even if it's like, oh, what difference will this make? Or why would I do this? Like,
Uh-huh.
just don't ignore all the things that interest you and all the things that you think are kind of meaningful just because, other people don't understand them.
Yeah, I think that goes back to like just kind of getting opportunities. I currently live in Indiana right now, and so at first I was kind of stuck on I'll probably stay around Indianapolis, so I'm not too far away from like home and stuff like
Mhm.
that. As I get older, I'm like, if an opportunity kind of presents itself or someplace else, I'm probably more likely to take it just because I've kind of gotten out the mindset. Again, comparing my first 2 years to my last 2 years is a total shift. And
Mhm.
so my first 2 years, I was like, yeah, I'll probably stay closer to home, even if I get an opportunity. But now I've kind of grown a little bit more and then feel like I'm going to take an opportunity across the state or maybe across another country, maybe one day, some far in the future, but definitely a different state. I didn't want to move away from Indiana at first, but as I kind of got older, kind of like my grandparents are like, you got to go live. So,
I'm your grandparents are wise. No, it's a great age to, one of my permissions is experiment. So don't, at that age, don't be of the mindset that, anything is permanent. It isn't. You can move wherever you want to move and head straight back to Indiana at any time. I'm not saying that there isn't cost involved. There is, but,
yeah.
can make things work. It's a great time. One, I tell people who are in college or even in high school, like, what I really want you to imagine is that you are starting to fill like whatever works for you, a toolkit, like a backpack, something that you're going to be carrying with you as you move through the world that you're going to keep using in order to help you find your way through life. And all you're doing the whole time is filling it with stuff that is useful, whether that's skills, experiences, things you're learning along the way that as you move through your life, you're going to reach back into that toolkit at different times and go, hey, wait, that might be useful for now. And in my
Right.
mind, that extends to new experiences, the capability to get out of your comfort zone, to use the old cliche, and go somewhere different. It doesn't need to be super far away. I'm not saying everybody needs to go far, but I think that having an experience of stepping out of your most familiar set of circumstances is really important. And it only gets harder. So, again, in the book, I say, if you think it's hard at 20, I don't want to tell you what it's like at 40.
Yeah.
So, at 20, you're pretty flexible. You have pretty low sort of responsibility. The consequences of things not entirely working out are relatively low. So really step into that. There's this moment to, again, listen in. What do you want? And if you don't want to go far, cool, that's fine. Within your own Within Indiana, there's probably lots of places you haven't been, lots of experiences on offer. So it doesn't have to be some big geographic go somewhere really far away. But I think your mindset has to be, okay, now's my time. Let me explore. Let me just
Yeah.
soak things up. Let me take in new stuff. Because what typically happens in adulthood, of course, is that you start to get more narrow, you start to get more sort of routinized and samey. And that's when often, the kind of stuckness sets in. And I think what you need to do as a young person is try and just really build up a bank of experiences that helps you not get too stuck too soon.
Yeah, I agree. Going back to something you said about you kind of being you were like looking for like straight A's and kind of getting good grades and kind of had your degree shift. How can students shift from like chasing external success like grades or job titles to designing a life of intentionality and authenticity?
Coming with the big questions, aren't you, Terry? Yeah, I mean, obviously that's sort of what it's kind of the premise of the whole book. And let me be clear that, I mean, external metrics will always matter. So I'm
Right.
not suggesting you ignore them completely. What I am saying is that so that the value of those things has depreciated significantly since the time that I was in college. So
Oh,
when I was in college, it was like if I came out with my, 4.0 and my whatever cum laude or whatever, it was like a ticket to the next thing. I don't believe that it is the ticket for you guys that it was for me. And, for better or for worse, it's not buying you access to the degree that it was before. So, what that means is that your attention and your focus doesn't need to be as preoccupied with, maxing out on all those metrics. What you do need to spend time doing is, as we've already discussed, getting more real about what it is that interests you, what you're really curious about and want to kind of keep learning about in the future, where you think you're best at and good at, like what makes you happy, and because you feel like it comes easily and naturally and nicely. So, one of the things I say is like, I'd rather have somebody who's a totally switched on and excited history major than a totally checked out business major because they're only doing it because they think their parents will be happy and it'll get them a job. Like, I
right.
want you to spend this time really going after things that like switch on your curiosity, make you feel really interested. Like those are the things that are so important right now for you to kind of tap into and learn more about. And some of that will be your degree, and some of that might be outside of that. Like there are ways for you I volunteered a lot. I got involved in other clubs. I did stuff. Like for me, the worst thing would be to sleepwalk into some degree that you think is going to buy you something because we don't even know what jobs you're going to be doing in 5 years' time. So rather use the time to get super intentional and focused on your interests, your curiosities, what you do well. And also, I want to throw this in there what you care about, like what matters to you. And because I think for a lot of young people, it's like college has become very like corporate. it's just about a job. And I think it's a great time for you to be like, what are some issues or some ideas or things that I really care about, that I want to be a part of, that I'd love to contribute to? And again, not necessarily because that's going to point you to a job, but because it gives you feedback about who you are.
Uh-huh.
This is 4 years of getting to know yourself. Use it. Use it not just to, see it as professional preparation, but as, a huge 4 years of investment in self that will then, have you coming out the other side feeling like you know yourself better, you know more about what you're really interested in. You've started to fill that toolkit with stuff that you think might be interesting or useful moving forward. But it's all that kind of inner work. I talk a lot about like introspection. So, getting to know yourself, being self aware, and then exploration, putting yourself into new situations, meeting new people, trying new things. It's such a great time for you in this period to be kind of in that cycle of introspection and exploration so that you can
Uh-huh.
really kind of just not only get to know yourself, but also get out into the world, like do stuff, do interesting stuff,
Right.
keep yourself feeling stimulated and alive.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. That's all really good, very good, insightful for students like me. I'm 22 years old, going into my master's, for high school students, for freshmen who are just starting. One of my brothers is going to be a junior. So this is all really insightful. So I just have one last question for you today. And so you've worked with people and organizations across cultures. So, what's one lesson from another part of the world that you think college students in the US really need to hear right now?
So there's a concept in South Africa called Ubuntu, which is I am because we are. It's very much about I exist within a community. I can't exist on my own. The vast majority of African cultures and communities, and they're diverse and numerous, obviously, but are very kind of we focused and not just I focused. And I think, particularly in the United States, but across a lot of the Western world, things have become very individualistic and individualized. And, I think a lot of young people feel like they're alone and they're in it on, figure it all out on their own and their success is on their own shoulders. And it can feel really overwhelming
Uh-huh.
and can make you feel very anxious. And I would say that you have to see yourself as part of a bigger community or go and find a community where you feel like you have belonging, where you feel like you have connection, because navigating adult life is challenging and also joyous and exciting, but you can't do it alone. You shouldn't do it alone. And I think being really intentional about being a part of communities that make you feel like you belong somewhere is a really important thing for people for their own personal wellness and for their own long-term sort of success and thriving.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Jill, for taking time out today on this episode. I've never interviewed someone that lives in another country, so you are my first, hopefully not my last, but this was a very
Right?
great and informative podcast episode. To all my viewers out there, thank you all for listening. Thank you all for tuning in. Please go and purchase Jill Riley's book called 10 Permissions. Go check it out. And is there any final thoughts that you want to leave the audience, Jill?
Well, on a super practical note, the book is already available for pre-order on Amazon. So honestly, please. It's a slim book. It's not a heavy lift. It's not some big heavy thing. I know college students have a lot of work and reading they have to do anyway, but it won't be too much for you. I think also just kind of to say, it's okay wherever you are in your process. I think a lot of times young people put a lot of pressure on themselves to have everything figured out, and they look around at people who they think have it all together and they don't or something. And I guess I just want to say, gosh, you've got so much time and so much opportunity ahead of you to explore what's possible out in this world and to not be afraid. Because I know there's a lot of fear right now about the world and oh my gosh, it's a mess. And it's like, okay, yeah, it is. But it's also beautiful, and there are also amazing people in all parts of the world. So, you know, really kind of, it's okay to just take your time and to keep exploring who you are and how you show up to the world.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And again, thank you all for listening and taking time out for this episode. Have a good rest of your day or night or whenever you're listening to this. Peace.